Nick Mattar teaches digital marketing at Wayne State University in Detroit. With 10 years of digital marketing experience, Nick also is the founder and CEO of Digital Detroit, a marketing strategy and training company. He is currently writing a content marketing textbook for students, which we are super excited about. It is exciting always to have someone who has industry experience as well as academic experience, since that's one of the things that student believes so much in, is bridging that gap. We're very excited to be able to hear from someone who has tips for everyone, but also that kind of has their own piece of experience. But it looks like we're going to get started. I'll put your chat in the bio, or I'll put your bio in the chat, and I'll introduce myself real quick. My name is Darlin. I'll be helping monitor the chat for you, Nick, so that way any questions that go in at the end, we're going to leave a few minutes for those questions, and I'll have you answer them for me. So anybody in the chat who's listening, go ahead and put your questions, and we'll make sure that we get them answered for you. And I'll hand it over to Nick.
All right, thank you so much, Darlin. And thank you everybody for attending my breakout session today. As mentioned there, my name is Nick Mattar. I teach digital marketing at Wayne State University, located in Midtown Detroit, Michigan. I am working from home, of course, right now. I wish I could be in the office and be an ambassador for the city of Detroit, but for today, we're gonna drill down into all things content marketing. Content marketing is a topic of mine that I've really been fascinated by over the last couple of years. As many of you probably know, it's taken off in recent years, and it's interesting seeing. I did a little job survey myself, inspired by yesterday's sessions, and just locally in Detroit, taking a look at entry-level marketing positions and what are the skills that people are looking for. And it was really interesting to see content marketing was very present across so many different positions. And I mean, they were all sorts of different marketing roles. They were, there was social media roles, there were general digital marketing positions, email marketing. Everything was really interesting to see, and I'm still trying to figure out if companies know what they're talking about when they're hiring somebody for content marketing, or if that is legitimately becoming this pervasive part of all of these marketing roles in today's world. So we're going to talk a little bit about my experience as an educator, as a mentor, as a trainer of all things digital marketing as well. Because one of the big things that I do in addition to teaching, you know, I've taught digital marketing. This is going to be year 5 or 6. I've already lost count. But as a part-time faculty, I also do other things on the side. I actually work with Wayne State doing work in the graduate school. I do marketing there, the associate director of marketing. And then I also have my own business, Digital Detroit, and our main thing recently has become training entry level and younger marketing talent and positions for businesses to help upskill them to the kind of that next level of experience. Because as all of you here probably know, digital marketing amongst people like myself, millennials and everything, has been largely self-taught. And this is this first generation that is being taught in a more regimented way. So we'll also talk about those differences here shortly. But I'm also always trying to learn more. You know, my big thing is, as a content marketer, I've never created an account with a social media account with a million followers. I've never had a website with tens of millions of website visitors. I'm not the guy that's you know, won the marketing game, has won the internet. But I've been studying those who have, And I've been spending a lot of time over the last years, especially in the last 12 months or so, as I'm writing this textbook for Stukin, which I'm very excited about. It's been interesting to see the common themes among the content marketing elites, as we like to say. Joe Pulizzi, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. He just released the most recent edition of his Content Inc. book. John Bonini is a little bit not quite in the level of Joe Pulizzi, but a big content marketing guy, works for DataBox. He's always on LinkedIn sharing his intel. And also, of course, Neil Patel, who's always sharing his growth hacks and what's been working, along with dozens of others. I would name them all if I could, but I've just been collecting all of this information. I've been trying to apply it myself where I can with clients, with my own work. Have seen some really good results, and recently have also brought that over into the teaching world about 2 years ago. Really started adding a focus on content marketing. Beforehand, it was still there. It just wasn't quite the focus area that it is now. But I will say it's been an interesting learning experience for myself as an educator. So let's talk about content marketing for a minute. Content marketing is at the intersection of just about every digital marketing topic. You might be great at social media advertising or email marketing, but if you only understand one or a few topics, you're inevitably going to struggle to bring them all together into one cohesive plan. And this is because content marketing requires an understanding of the larger, bigger picture and the strategy that goes into any given campaign. Students that go into the working world with a content marketing foundation will be really well suited for any digital marketing role, I believe. And from a teaching perspective, it can be hard to instill that mindset into students. Content marketing is an art, not a science. But some of these topics can be boiled down to a very fine scientific point, something like analytics. You can make a little bit more regimented. And obviously, I actually gave a session, led a session on analytics for Stukin last fall, where I mentioned that it is also a mindset and that it's something that you need to be thinking about. Analytics isn't something that you can just do every 30 days, for example, and get by. I mean, you can, but you're kind of missing the point and the beauty of digital marketing analytics. Content marketing is similar. It requires an exposure to a diverse type of content explaining topics that your students may have never thought possible. And my example that I share first off is with Pillsbury. This is the very first example that I've also put into the contemporary example I put into the content marketing textbook. That Pillsbury is a company that sells baked goods, baked goods that you can make at home. Sometimes they're already baked. But the big thing that Pillsbury did about 8 years ago now, I was shocked at how early they were to the game, um, is pivoted their website from being all about sales to all about recipes. In 2010, I went back to the Internet Wayback Machine and looked at their website, and it was all about signing people up for their online membership. They could get coupons in their emails, save like 10, 15% on, uh, trying to think of some Pillsbury products, various croissants and rolls. But today, 11 years later, of course, this website is completely focused on recipes to make, where their product is one, maybe two of a dozen, 15, 16 different items. In fact, if you want to buy their products online, it's going to take you 4 clicks before you add it to your cart. Compare that to something like Amazon, the largest online retailer in the world. You can add something to your cart in 1 click. Suffice to say, the best practice these days, fewer clicks is going to get you more sales online. But content marketing is not just about getting people to click and add items to carts. This is not an e-commerce best practice. Rather, this is about sharing content, capturing the I would say the taste buds of the viewers. And you, as an educator, probably look at this now and think, well, of course they should do this. It's the right move to make. But 10 years ago, this was not the practical thinking. I did some other research on what websites looked like back in the day. And it was very uncommon for content marketing back then. And even now, you do see it with a lot of the leading brands, a lot of the major consumer brands out there, especially with food. Content marketing has really become the common best practice. But you still see a lot of businesses that do not do this. Instead, they focus on other things, and so that is where we can educate our next generation of marketers to make it happen. Digital marketing is often taught linearly, like this GIF I found, GIF, however you say it. It's useful for other topics sometimes in digital marketing and best practices. But really, we need to think about content marketing as more abstract, more dynamic. This is as abstract as I could get without getting more avant-garde. A bunch of shapes and different colors moving around. And yes, I'm purposely trying to throw in as many different types of content into this presentation as possible to also kind of practice what I preach. Well, let's look at our learning objectives today. I haven't even gotten to the crux of the presentation yet, but I have three big learning objectives. One, the core functions of a content marketing course. Most institutions do not have a content marketing course. Rather, they weave it into other courses, which is perfectly fine. We will go through the idea, if you do want to do a content marketing course, some of the key things to have. We'll also talk about the use of unconventional real world examples of content. And finally, you'll be able to apply these to the stages of creativity. And let's start with this non-traditional teaching format. As I mentioned earlier, we are teaching the next generation of digital marketers. Your experience has been anything like mine. You've learned your craft through years of experimentation as new forms of digital marketing has evolved. Now, for the first time, an entire generation of digital marketers are being taught a set of skills that previously were largely developed through good old trial and error. We would see what worked, what didn't work, test, retest, and really it was the wild, wild west for so many years. I myself like to share the story of my first digital marketing experience as a high schooler on MySpace and realizing that my profile, in order to attract eyes and to get people to actually look and understand what I'm saying, what I'm trying to convey, I needed it to look really good. I needed a lot of content. I would put a survey out there about me that some of my friends had. I embedded a music player. I had photos. And I was able to even edit the HTML code so that the color scheme was not the default white and blue that MySpace had for so many years. Rather, I made it more about me and my personal brand. That is all coming together in into content marketing, and a lot of those elements are still utilized today. But now we fast forward 15, 16, 17, however many years ago that was later, and I am in the front of the classroom or behind the computer with the presentation and looking at this non-traditional teaching format. How do I get students to be more creative? And this is what I have found had worked. I didn't just make these up. I definitely found some online, would test some, retest some. Sometimes it'd work, sometimes it wouldn't work. And first I look at first, like, what should I do less of? I've stopped lecturing as much. I've stopped using the word assignments. Instead, I would refer to them as experiments, company overviews, collaborating. I would command less at the beginning of my teaching experience, my teaching time as a part-time faculty. I wanted to take command of the classroom, and I've done a lot less of that and much more laissez-faire. But also a lot less hypotheticals, more real world, and less seeing and more doing, more students actually doing the work. And a lot of you probably are looking at this slide thinking, well, of course, these are insane. Of course we do this. But I just wanted to reiterate this because it is important to kind of set the stage here for what the content marketing mindset, how to start it off. So the key elements of the course, I still require the main things, right? You still have the textbook. You can use mine starting sometime next year. Still good to have a simulation so you can keep that regimented real world experience just in case their own real world experience might go awry. Um, it requires some real world strategy and lots of examples, which kind of puts the onus on you as an educator to develop some of those real world examples. Because what does real world even mean these days? Really, this is where you can have students either start a business or create a content marketing strategy for an existing one. A digital marketing, a master's course that I teach right now, I have my students go out and work with actual companies. Usually it works, not always. But really, anybody can learn the different forms of content and when they can and should be implementing it. The real difference is when you're doing it in the real world in real time. That's the one that hits different. Becoming a content marketer requires a certain level of real world experience, and that should start here. I look at my favorite meme with Vince McMahon here. There are three basic ways to go about the real world scenario, and they all involve some legwork on our part as instructors at the start. But I think it's all worth it in the long run, and students will get the best experience possible. And I even look at this sometimes as if it's really successful, they can even put this onto their resume as real world experience if they're working with businesses. The more real their experience, the better off they will be. You can either simulate the environment using your course website. I've tried that. That's a lot of work for me. You can make students create all of their assets and for a and their business itself from scratch. That takes the course from really content marketing up to like creating an online business course. But really, I think that that the sweet spot is when they can find businesses that actually need help and match them up with these groups. I found some really good examples with my course with my students over the years that has worked. Um, it's been a lot of trial and error for me though too. Um, but when we look at these different scenarios for content marketing, working with businesses is really important. And again, as mentioned before, I'm sure a lot of you have implemented this before, but for content marketing, it's really important that they can get that real world experience. But now we look at the importance of examples. And this isn't actually a video, this is just a screenshot. Um, but teaching content marketing and creativity requires as many examples as possible. This means blogs, photos, infographics, podcasts, videos, memes, GIFs, everything in between. There's going to be over 100 examples in the upcoming textbook that I'm putting together, but you should really familiarize yourself with a few that you can discuss with the class in depth. So here's a few examples I have. We have this video. Hopefully the sound will work for you. If not, just so you know, while it loads,
the biggest mistake that people were making.
you can see his text at the bottom, those subtitles. This is a podcast. This is a podcast that is promoted on a YouTube video. For me, it's good to be able to share content that is being promoted on different types of content. And to me, the way that people have figured out how to promote podcasts with video is a way to show not only that there is how to do video marketing, but also how to use video to promote a podcast. This isn't my favorite type of podcast promotion in the world, but it's an example, and it's one that I was able to figure out to work here. Here's another one. This is using data visualizations. If you subscribe to Charter, they do some really interesting data visualizations here. This is data visualizing the Google search volume for different types of milk: almond milk, oat milk, soy milk, rice milk. This also, you're using a data visualization, a type of visual content to share Google search term volume trends. We're looking at content that is not just plain like, all right, here's an infographic of something. This is bringing together two elements of digital marketing into one, what I consider to be very interesting graphic. Why oat milk and almond milk? I don't know why they created it. I think oat milk is on the rise, but when I look at it, I think of it more from the Google search volume standpoint and the fact that all of these terms are quite popular. Then another version I have here, this is a screenshot of a webinar that is being hosted where they're showing analytics and they're going through. I wasn't going to play the webinar, of course. Webinar and a webinar is a little kind of meta. But for me, I found this interesting because this is a guy that is giving a webinar talking about his site's analytics and explaining them. So this is using video, again, a live video seminar type thing to explain Google Analytics, again, utilizing multiple content types together. Then finally, we have the graphic design side. This is from Social Media Examiner. They have 20 tools for marketers on Clubhouse, again, bringing together multiple types of content into one. I've always considered those to be something that's really powerful, and it's something that will resonate more, a little bit more dynamically than just, say, a video of a YouTuber promoting something, promoting a product, or a TikTok video of a company like Berea is showing their new types of pasta. But now let's get to the 3 steps of creativity. So we've got the diverse types of content, but we have 3 steps. We have audience, style, and variety. I'm not going to go too in depth into the marketing principles, because we're all educators here, but I've found there to be really 3 key points to make here. So let's start with the audience. Before you can really get creative, students need to know that their audience, know their audience and the needs of that population. So you can use, whatever audience techniques that you have. You could have the most creative students in the world, but if they are marketing to a Gen Z audience when their company is really supposed to be targeting Gen X, that content's going to fall on deaf ears. The mismatched audience thing, really, I didn't think about the first year I taught content marketing. I had people that were coming up with the most interesting stuff content-wise. Students were just blowing me away with the stuff they were creating. But then I would look at it and I'd think, wait a minute, this actually isn't applied. This wouldn't apply to this company. There was one, for example, that was I'm trying to remember the exact company, but it was a coffee shop. And it was located in downtown Detroit, really focusing on the morning rush hour, the afternoon rush hour. And the team in the course was creating all of this really, really cool content, but they wanted to put it on LinkedIn, and it was about the business aspects. And I asked them, all right, how does this relate to your target audience? And they were completely mismatched, thinking, all right, if these are business people, they're just on LinkedIn and nothing else. So they didn't really understand the idea that just because you're a professional doesn't mean that you're only on LinkedIn, right? You're going to be on other sites as well. There were a lot of other directions that probably would have suited them a little bit better. And for me, being able to establish the audience first and before they get too creative is really important, because then they know who they're dealing with. And then we move on to the style. There are literally billions of pieces of content online, and your students are going to need to really carve out a niche. So, how do they do this? They really need to understand the existing brand that they're working with. It can be hard to discern the difference at first between similar companies like Twitter and Facebook. But if you start with companies that are a little bit more obviously different, like a KFC versus Delta Airlines, which are the first two I thought of, because I was driving by a KFC when I was thinking about this and I saw a Delta plane flying above me. Um, it's really clear. Like your students will be able to pull apart and piece back together the elements of the brand. Really, the best place to see this is on social media. We all know about Wendy's on social media. Very different from what you see on their website. But when it comes to promoting content on a variety of platforms, that social media voice is going to be a big part of it. And Wendy's target audience that's on Twitter, all they know is that. They know when they walk into Wendy's, they're going to get the traditional QSR experience. But they're used to seeing them more, interacting with them more online than when they actually go to the restaurant. And I like to use a list of brand traits, put something like this up on the screen so that students can help establish the style. If they can essentially write out what that style is, that will help them match up what their actual content should be doing. And I've got a nice set here. This is definitely not an exhaustive list. This is just the best one that I could find as an example here today. Third and final, we have the variety of content. This is the part that they want to do. This is where they create the new and interesting content. You review these types of content. There's written, audio, video, visuals. There's the idea that content breeds content, giving them those real world examples, but then also implement some real world scenarios. I think about something like this, these two charts. Um, this is kind of making a difficult discussion a little bit more lighthearted with introverts and extroverts. But you see that this doesn't really necessarily fit in, like, this isn't the type of content that you would imagine uh, that you would have first think of when your students are developing a content marketing strategy. They're probably thinking, all right, blogs, article, infographics, videos. Let's do a podcast, something like that. But really, we want to introduce them to more than just siloing off their content and giving them all of these in between pieces, like we talked about earlier. Then you also have something like there's business gifts that combines the idea of the gift with graphic design. It's things that can be a little bit more interesting. And again, the more that you are exposing them to different types of content, you even get bonus points for when there's multiple types of content coming together. This is the user experience honeycomb, they call it. This is I wouldn't call this an infographic, but it's something very basic and essential, and it shows the different elements to the website's user experience. So not only are you showing them this type of content, but they're also learning the second stage of digital marketing best practices. The user experience honeycomb is very important as a content marketer. If you're creating a website, if you are creating any content, does it have these traits? I mean, it's a very deep topic, content marketing is, and you only have so long as an educator to really get into it. Last example, we have Periscope in Twitter. I couldn't really find a good digital marketing example because Periscope videos go away and I couldn't really play one. But I just wanted to share an example of another one is the idea of live video on social media. Another great kind of content that your students will hopefully resonate with. So let's bring it all together here. First, we're instilling the creative content mindset, providing some class-wide examples, giving them then providing scenarios in smaller groups, and then finally, if you want to do the individual projects, I've noticed in my experience, the individual project work well later in the semester. And I do not use the word assignment here in this slide. But it's also good when they're working to give them some resources to use. Everybody knows about Canva. Everybody can create a graphic on Canva. The students might not. And showing them a site like Canva is going to also give them some more inspiration, because that is what Canva is there for. The same goes for StoryboardBat.com. These comic strips are becoming more and more common on social media. I just went on and created this myself a couple days ago. I think it took me like 10 minutes to create this free little diagram. Again, this is an alternative type of content, but it's something that can get them thinking about how content can resonate with their proper audience, assuming that they have the style and their targeting correct. Fake iMessage, that I also created this one. Very easy to build. And if you've ever been on Twitter and you see these text messages that look like screenshots, you can just go on and do it yourself here. There's tweets, tweetgen.com. I created this one as well from Michael Jordan. He doesn't actually have a Twitter account. I checked. And the purpose of me showing these examples is to provide as many diverse types of content as possible. The more out there, out of the ordinary types of content that you show the students, the more they're going to think holistically and think outside of the box as they establish that creative, that content mindset. Because really, pen and paper may lead to initial frustrations, but really, students are going to prioritize really what's important. So a couple things here. I like to grade content and whether it works for the audience, if it's the brand, like we talked about. I like to use action verbs like create or design or imagine. I create an accepting environment. I try to say the old yes and instead of no. I'm sure you've seen that somewhere along the way yourself. I encourage that pencil and paper and not typing, but inevitably that one kind of falls on deaf ears sometimes. But really, the final thing if there's like one last thing that I've always thought about myself is I've had to really dig deep to find my own creativity. To create this presentation required me to really think outside of my own box. I may be writing a textbook, but that doesn't mean that that I have everything at my disposal. Some of the pieces of content here, I spent a lot of time trying to think, all right, what's going to work here as an example and what won't? And for me, everybody has the creativity somewhere, especially as an educator. I mean, you don't get to where you are today without some sort of creativity. It's just about being able to unlock it through consuming as much different content as possible. Content marketing, it teaches students that digital marketing is not a to-do list with a series of checkboxes. It's a mindset. It utilizes technology to grow business. And if they take that with them past college into the working world, they will be set up to succeed. And that's really the goal for me as an educator, is I want my students to succeed in their career endeavors. And I hope that between the textbook and the course and the examples that I provide, that they will do just that. So thank you.
Awesome, thank you. All right, we have a few questions coming in, but if anybody else has any more, go ahead and add them into the chat. We'll get started with some of the beginning ones. What are some companies that have the best examples of effective content marketing strategy?
Well, it will depend on how much content are you looking for. There's some businesses. So Chipotle, for example, has figured out the TikTok game, as has Dunkin' Donuts. analytics. I actually just read a blog post about this. But they aren't as strong on some other channels. You look at companies with a more of a stronger blog slash social media integration, and there's really an interesting combination. I think Taco Bell is great. They have everything figured out. But also you can look at digital marketing businesses. HubSpot spends millions of dollars a year on their content marketing. So of course it's going to be elite. You also have the same with some of those people that I talked about earlier. Neil Patel, I mean, he practices what he preaches to the max. He has a podcast that's 5 minutes long and just provides tactics. He has a website analyzation tool. That's even a word. He has a very extensive blog and offering services and a really nice path to purchase. There's a lot. So I mean, those are the big ones. I would also argue that as you get more in, it depends if you want to look at B2B or B2C. If you look at B2C, most of the food companies are going to be your best examples. If it's B2B, digital marketing companies and software as a service providers, the big ones, are going to be your best bet.
Awesome, thank you. And then someone asked if you could share the link or point us in the direction of the webinar that had the person talking about their Google Analytics. You shared a slide that had.
Oh yeah, I will have to dig that up. I have it somewhere, but yes, I will definitely try to do that.
Awesome. They wanted to hear about how you prepare these content marketing assignments. You talked about kind of how creativity can be a roadblock, but also it seems kind of like spontaneity is a big part of your content marketing strategy.
Yes. So I start before I assign any projects, we start with the in-person stuff. I took a couple of years of improv when I was in high school. And so I am very much all about keeping students on their toes. I will walk into the classroom with a couple of scenarios and businesses. Some of them will be real businesses, some of them will be made up, or it can be a little bit more ambiguous, where they don't have to think through the style as much. And we'll go through it in real time. Some students at the beginning of the semester are going to naturally be creative and ready to give their ideas. And I've also found that those students are usually pretty good at kind of jump starting the rest of the class. From there, after we do some in person together, and it was really hard to do online, by the way, through Zoom, but in person, it's very easy to do. Very animated, as you can see with my hands and walking around, getting people kind of pumped up and active in class. But from there, I'll go into larger group assignments and I'll create, the assignments are always a scenario where, say, the assignment will always start with, you've just been hired by this company and this is their audience and this is their style, where I'll lay those out when they just have to create the content. Or I will just give them the company that they might know and love, that doesn't do a lot of content marketing as it is. And then that makes them go through all of the paces from all three steps of the creativity. So it's always a scenario. The in-person stuff in real time is not a scenario. It's more of just me just asking questions, like what content would work here and here. But then after that, we get into scenario-based assignments. I used the word assignments, did not mean to. Proud.
Awesome, thank you. One question was, how do you grade creativity? Since you kind of.
Oh, that is a great question. So the first thing I ensure is that I'll look at the content. The first thing I need to make sure is that it's matching the style of the brand. Creativity can go off the rails if they are, they're working on they're companies like John Barbados or something, and they like very high-end clothing company, and they come in with some goofy meme that does not fit the style whatsoever. They're going to get docked points for that. Secondly, is the audience, like I mentioned before. The content needs to match who the brand's audience is. But then third is there needs to be, like, you can tell unique, like creative content from not creative content. Sometimes I will leave it open and say, where the larger assignments will be like, all right, you're going to create a content calendar and you're going to be responsible for creating X number of pieces of content. And they come back with 4 infographics or 4 GIFs, then that's going to get docked points too. There needs to be some variety in the type of content that they create.
Awesome. The last question that we have is, how do you approach avoiding a creative burnout with your students?
Well, I will say the courses I teach only meet once a week, so I haven't encountered that yet. But so I have encountered that with myself, and there's always a couple of weeks where they're a little bit slower a couple of weeks in the semester where they are a little bit more traditional. They're not as intense, and they're a little bit more of me giving examples. So not every week, usually it's an 11 or 14 week course. Out of those 11 weeks, say I'll spend 6 to 7 of them going all out, what we've been talking about here. The remaining will be me strictly providing all of these examples where they don't need to be on their game, creating new content, coming up with ideas. All they have to do is sit back, and it's like that time when you have the substitute teacher and you're watching a movie, except I am providing all of these different ideas and content types like I showed in this presentation. And I do it in such a way where I know that it's going to help them the next week when we get back to that.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing your own example, kind of how that goes. I know as a marketing person that I also go through creative burnout. So it's good to realize that it's something that you go through, that students may also, but we're very grateful for your presentation and all that you shared with us. And we're super excited to have you as an author as well. But hopefully everyone is able to enjoy that. Here's a message about in the chat. I just put a link to our product launch event that's coming up. And then there's going to be a few more breakout sessions coming up. So I'm going to put that information in the chat as well, so you can navigate to that. But we have many more things happening at ProfCon. We're super excited and love your feedback. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. It was great to be here.